Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Trade Association Information and Discussion and our online webinar, Super 30. This is the 12th episode on Super 30. Well, the Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Trade Association is an association of over 1,200 companies, MSMEs, who are in the field of air conditioning, refrigeration, and ventilation, and focuses on the development and the organizational skill sets of the companies which are in the field of HVAC&R. Over the last 1 year, in partnership with CEEW, we have been bringing you lots of knowledge sessions, especially like the Super 30, which is a 30-minute show on factors that can actually, policy matters that can actually impact our industry. And today is one such session which talks about the end of life of refrigerants. What does it mean? It means that you've got an air conditioning or a refrigeration equipment, and after the life of that product, say maybe 10 years, 12 years is over, there's a refrigerant. The refrigerant, or traditionally openly called as the gas in the machine, but it's actually a refrigerant which is ozone depleting. What happens to that? Is left into the air. Can we afford to have a sustainable solution by just letting all those refrigerants out into the atmosphere? No, it's not going to happen. So today we're going to learn about what needs to be done, what are the global best practices for that, and what probably could happen in India. And that will help you understand how you should be able to align your business to these regulatory or changes which that could come into our country. So to explain this change of life, we have Mr. Sonal Kumar here with us today. He did come in our last session too and spoke on the circularity of the refrigerants. Mr. Sonal Kumar is the program lead and he's responsible for sustainable cooling program at CEEW. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sonal.
Thanks, Mr. Panika, for hosting.
All right, so I'm good. Great. So I'm going to actually hand over to you and for us to explain what it means and what are the global best practices, how is it happening in different countries, and what probably should happen in India. To our viewers, log in those questions. You can ask Sonal during the session. We'll answer all of them. All you have to do is just go into your chat section from whichever channel you're watching us on, put that question, and we will have that answer. So over to you, Mr. Sonal.
Thank you. So am I audible clearly and my screen is visible?
Yes, Mr. Kumar. Please go ahead.
Okay. So once again, thank you, RATA, for hosting me for this session. So a quick introduction to my organization. So I work with Council on Energy, Environment and Water, and it's a leading policy research institutions which works for driving impacting sustainable development at a scale with the use of data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach. So we are a team of around 200 plus multidisciplinary professionals who work together to bring in some transformative changes like low carbon economy, energy transitions, power markets, etc., to improve the quality of life. So to basically provide access to clean air, sustainable water, sustainable cooling to our population, and also work on some of the enablers which helps us in achieving these goals, like sustainable finance, technologies, futures, and circular economy, etc. So with this brief introduction, I will quickly move to the topic of today. And so those who have heard me during the last session, so they must be aware that we had bifurcated this topic into two sessions. So in the previous session, we covered broadly about the concept of circular economy. So why it is important to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Then also looked at the concept of life cycle impacts and the extended producer responsibility. Then we discussed about how these concepts are important to the cooling sector and what does it mean when we say circularity in the cooling sector. So both in terms of recycling of the product, cooling product like ACs, refrigerators, and other products which we are using to get cooling or refrigeration, and also managing the refrigerants at the end of the life. So either recycling and reusing it or safely destroying it to reduce the environmental impact. So in continuation to the previous session, so today we will be discussing on what are the global best practices for the end of life management of refrigerant. So different countries are adopting certain practices, have undertaken some policy initiative, and they have put in some programs for end of life management of refrigerant in their countries. So we try to see few examples out of them, and then what are the developments happening in India in that regard, and also what would be the opportunities for Indian businesses going forward. Sorry. So when we say circularity of refrigerant, so it means it should complete a circle, complete circle during its lifetime. So if you see the different life cycle stages, so we produce the refrigerant, then it is used in some equipment, particularly especially providing cooling for cooling. It may have other applications like in foams and other things, but majorly it is used for in equipments for providing cooling. And then at the end of life of that equipment or during the servicing, if the refrigerant gets contaminated, so we recover it from the equipment. And current practice is that we generally discharge it into the environment. But if we have to bring circularity into it, so then after this recovery and collection, so there are two processes: either we can recycle or reclaim it and then reuse it, or if it is not suitable for recycling or reuse reclamation, so then we can destroy it, so that it is just not simply vented out into the environment, because it has either ozone depleting potential or global warming potential. And if it is simply put out in environment, it will cause environmental impacts. Uh, so why it is important? Why managing refrigerant is important? Uh, basically, because of the Montreal Protocol, we have phased out CFCs, and now in the process of phasing out hydrochlorofluorocarbon (HCFCs), and we have also ratified the Kigali Amendment. So these are international treaties, and India will also start implementing phasing down of HFCs after 2028. But during this period, we will have a huge number of cooling devices containing these refrigerants. So at the end of their life, if these refrigerants are simply vented out, so they will cause environmental impact. So it is very important to recover those refrigerant at the end of life of these equipments, and then treat it, either recycle and reuse it, because many of the appliances would be operational, so we can reuse it during the servicing, or we can simply destroy it. Also, we are still a growing market in terms of the cooling demand, and it is expected to grow by 10 folds, 11-fold in the next two and a half decade. So considering this fact, also it becomes important to see that our refrigerant stock accumulated in the existing in the products, so that will also increase significantly. So it becomes even more important to manage those refrigerants sustainability at the end of their life. So I will now discuss some of the global best practices. So there are several countries who have put in place to manage the refrigerant. So Montreal Protocol says, or in a sense, puts limits on production and use of substances which can cause ozone depletion. Uh, and in many of the developed countries, particularly who have basically adopted it earlier, so they have also put in place certain systems for recovery, reclamation, and destruction of those refrigerant. So I will start with few of the countries. So I will start with New Zealand. So they have in regard to the policy initiative, so they have ozone layer protection regulations, which basically governs the production, use, and import of refrigerant in their country. And they also promote responsible management and handling of refrigerant. So it is not mandatory to manage it at the end of the life, but it's a voluntary thing. But they have a national program which promotes end of life management. They also have a waste minimization act, which basically says that in the cooling appliances at the end of their life, the refrigerant should be recovered. So coming to that national program, which is basically facilitating this end of life management. So they have a product stewardship scheme called Recovery, and it's a basically trust not-for-profit organization, and it is particularly formed for destruction of synthetic refrigerant. So recovery, collection, and finally destructing it. And it's basically represented by the industry association. So their room air conditioners manufacturer association, their refrigeration and air conditioning trade association, which we have here also. So similar kind of association there, then vehicle manufacturers association. So it is basically represented by all these kind of industry bodies, and also experts from the sector and government representative. So I will just explain in the next slide how this program works there. So so basically, to fund this entire program, they collect advanced destruction fee, and this is basically a kind of tax which is paid by all the refrigerant importers or manufacturers. So the agency who are importing or manufacturing refrigerant, they pay a tax, and finally they pass this cost onto the customers or end user of the cooling devices. And this fee is used to finance the cost of recovery, collection, then transportation to a center, and then finally disposal of this refrigerant. They have started collecting it, I think, in late 90s and early 2000, but they basically it's not also mandatory to for all the refrigerant manufacturers or importers to give this tax, but many of them, since they are part of this recovery program or trust, so they are basically paying this tax. But whether someone has paid this tax or not, so but recovery and collection service is free for all of them. So now at the end of the life, they have make it mandatory to take out the gas either at the site of the customer, or that when the equipment comes for recycling in case of home appliances or vehicles. So at that time they have to mandatorily take out the gas. Then the gas is basically analyzed and weighed, so that they can know that which kind of gas and in what quantity they have collected. And then this they do not have a destruction facility in New Zealand, so they transport it to Australia for destruction. The other important factor is that during the entire process, the handling of refrigerant is done by trained and licensed service technicians. So they have a approved filler license, which is mandatory for all the technicians under the health and safety at work regulations. So they need to get those license if they are to be involved in handling of refrigerants. And this agency recovery, so they periodically report data to the government. So it is not mandatory, but they are impaneled with the government, and they report data to government that how much they have recovered and how much they have destroyed. So all this data goes to the government. So they have regulations, but they also have a nationwide program, and they are collecting some money as tax to fund this program. So that everyone in the value chain, they earns some money to do the task of recovery, collection, and transportation and destruction. We will take another example, so of Australia. So they also have a similar kind of program. So they have one regulation called Ozone Protection and Synthetic Gashouse Gas Management Act, which basically regulates the production, import, export, and use of synthetic refrigerant gases. And so they have, it's also have a similar language. So they also encourage the responsible management and handling of synthetic refrigerant gases. So here they have a Refrigerant Reclaim Australia program. It's also a not-for-profit organization, and similarly formed by representative from different industry partners from the cooling sector. So such as refrigerant wholesalers, manufacturers, cooling product manufacturers, service contractors, etc. And instead of collecting a tax, they have a refrigerant take back program, where basically, and here they are funding in two ways. So one is the refrigerant take back program. So if someone is collecting and submitting it to RRA collection centers, so they give rebate to them, and they are using the existing supply chain of refrigerant. So a service technician, when they visit a customer, to and for servicing or for decommissioning of the product at the end of the life. So he, if required at the servicing, he recover the gases, he or she, or at the end of life before decommissioning, they take out the gases. They charge the customers for their time, so the time they spent in recovering of gases, so they also include it in their bill. So basically the customer is paying for their time, and then they take that gas back to their servicing agency. Then the servicing agency take it back to the wholesaler or retailer of the gases. Then they take it back to the manufacturer of gases, and then they submit it to the Refrigerant Reclaim Australia collection centers. In this chain, they also get rebate from the manufacturers, or for directly from the RRA to the refrigerant manufacturer. They pass it on to the wholesalers, and they pass it to the service contractors. So a rebate in purchase of new refrigerant. So basically, it is being financed by two ways. One is this rebate, and other is the technician who is charging the user of those appliances for their time spent in the recovery. So after it is collected at the center, so then they again test it and weigh it, and then they have their own uh, destruction facilities. So they send it there for destruction, or in some cases they also reclaim and reuse it. So this is the implementation mechanism in Australia. Here also they have a very strong training and licensing scheme. So that service technicians are required to get license under, and it is called refrigerant handling license, issued by the Australian Refrigeration Council. So without that, they cannot handle the refrigerants. And this illustration at the bottom of the slide, so it shows what I had already explained, that how this mechanism is working in Australia. So if you take one example from Europe, so let us discuss the case of Norway. So in Europe, they have a standard European Union F-gas regulations, which basically limits the emission of refrigerant gases through restrictions in use and production, and also recovery. Uh, Apart from that, Norway also has a special scheme in their country. It is not common to other countries of Europe, the tax and refund scheme. So this is applicable in Norway. So in Norway, they do not manufacture refrigerant. So they basically import either in bulk or in the equipment which they are importing. So they basically levy a tax on the refrigerant which is imported in their country, and the tax is based on the global warming potential of the gas. So it is currently charged at a rate of $62 per ton of global warming potential. So to give you a perspective, so suppose I am importing 1 kg of R32, so the tax amount would be around 3,500 rupees. If I am importing R4110A, the tax amount would be somewhere around 10,000, 11,000 rupees on 1 kg of refrigerant. So basically, higher the global warming potential, higher will be the tax. So this is also to encourage use of lower global warming potential gases. How they implement it. So apart from that, they also have regulation on waste electronic and electrical equipment recycling, as well as on the vehicle recycling at the end of their life. So they have a good network of municipal collection centers where the consumers are required to submit their appliances at the end of their life, and all these collected appliances or collected vehicles, so they are sent to a centralized recycling facility, and where before recycling the equipment or vehicle, they first take out the gas. It is mandatory there. So they take out the gas. They basically store it in different containers depending upon the type of the gas. And then from this recycling centers, all this collected gas is sent to a testing facility. And there they test for the gas, like what is this global warming potential and what is the quantity of the gas. And based on that, they refund the tax amount. So but they also deduct the cost incurred in the entire supply chain. So for collection of equipment, recycling, recovery of gases, and testing of those gases. And after that, they also send it. So they do not have a destruction facility currently in Norway. Earlier, they were using a cement kiln located in Norway for destruction of gases. Now they are exporting it to Sweden and France for destruction. So all this cost incurred in the entire process, so they deduct it from the tax amount, and then they refund it back. So in a sense, it also makes business case or incentivizes the stakeholders involved in recovery and basically recovery, collection, and transportation of the refrigerant. Uh, Now we take one more example of Japan, and here it is completely different from the other countries. So while other have some regulation, and they also have a nationwide program which also incentivizes. Uh, Here they focus more on mandatory regulations supported by a very robust implementation mechanism. So they have a very strong data recording, tracking, and monitoring system in place, which helps in enforcement of this regulation. So they have four relevant regulations. So one is on protection of ozone layer, which regulate the production and import of controlled substances under the Montreal Protocol. It also imposes some limits on how much one can produce or how much one can consume. They also have an act on rational use and proper management of fluorocarbons. So basically, it talks about the life cycle management, the topic which we are talking now. Then they have law on recycling of home appliances and recycling on end-of-life vehicles. So these are the four guiding laws, and then they have also put in a very strong recording and monitoring mechanism. So basic, and here the user of the equipment or the owner of the vehicle, so they have to pay for the entire cost incurred in collection, transportation of the product, as well as the recovery of and recycling of the refrigerants. So what is the process here is, if suppose I am owner of a product or a vehicle, so I have to raise a request with the collection agency that I want my product to be taken back, or I want my vehicle to be taken back for recycling, and then I have to pay a fee for that. Then someone will come from that agency. They will take our system there. They will first recover the gases, then send the vehicle or the equipment to for recycling, and then the gases will be sent to the they have a refrigerant management facility, so that they are sent there. They recycle it, and then they issue a certificate of reclamation or destruction depending upon what they have done to these collection agencies, and the collection agencies give a certificate of recovery. So at every stage, a lot of documentation is involved. All these things are recorded on an online portal, and closely monitored to enforce this regulation. So here it's a mandatory regulation supported by very robust and a robust mechanism for implementation and enforcement. So we covered four examples, but there are many other countries like USA, Denmark, South Korea, Malaysia, where Singapore, where similar kind of initiatives are in place. So if we summarize the key learnings and highlights of these global best practices, so we have seen that there is a policy initiative to mandate end-of-life management, supported by a nationwide program to facilitate the end-of-life management. Uh, they have created some business case, so there is some source of finance, and it is basically incentivizing the different stakeholders in the value chain. uh, then focus on robust training and certification, so to ensure proper recovery handling of these refrigerants, and then active participation of the industry stakeholders. So in all of these cases, we have seen that the industry stakeholders, whether it is refrigerant manufacturer, equipment manufacturer, or service contractor, so they are actively participating in this program. So these are some of the key factors which are making these programs a success, and we can draw learnings from it while now we are developing similar programs for India. So, what are the developments happening in India? So, I will go quickly because a few minutes are left. Uh, so we are basically implementing HCFC phase out management plan, and we are now in the phase two of HCFC phase out management. plan implementation, and now we are developing SCFC phase 3. So in that there is a huge focus on end of life management, and it is currently under preparation. Uh, in the past also we have tried to establish few reclamation centers, and also train technicians on recovery, and some technicians were also provided with subsidized recovery tools. So already some focus is shifting towards end of life management. We also have e-waste management rules implemented by the Center Pollution Control Board. It's also a new thing which mandates for the recycling of e-waste, under which room air conditioner and refrigerators also come under that their ambit. We also have this vehicle scrappage policy now. It's these all these things are recent developments guided by the principles of circular economy and life cycle impacts, and managing the things at the end of their life. So already some developments are happening in India, and in near future we will certainly see that some policy initiative being undertaken for the end of life management of refrigerants. So, so since it's a new initiatives, it will always pose challenges to the industry, but it will also bring in certain opportunities. So, but giving it a positive tone, I will put it in terms of opportunities, since some new policy initiative is coming in. So it will have opportunities for expanding the business as well as creating new businesses. For example, there will be a huge role of service contractors, because uh, uh, for providing the industry with trained service technicians, as well as helping in recoveries and reclamation of refrigerant. Then huge role of tools equipment suppliers, because recovery tools will be needed, cylinders will be needed, so different equipments would be required. Waste recyclers, because as our market is still growing in future for recycling that many of products, we need to have a huge network of recycling facilities. Similarly, logistics, supply chain, testing facilities for testing of these refrigerants after the recycling and reclamation, and then finally recycling, reclamation, and destruction centers. So I have put few verticals, but there can be more. So we will come to know when the final policy will come out. But I also try to give them present them in a gear kind of thing, because all these verticals need to work together in a cohesive manner to basically make it a success. So this is basically this will certainly bring some opportunities for the Indian businesses. So with this, I end my talk today. So thank you. So if you have any questions, so
Well, Sonal, thank you so much for that information. So one thing is very clear from your presentation. It is a global practice, and it will also come in India. Some kind of a regulation will definitely come in India. Is that right?
yeah, correct.
So it's a matter of time before that regulation comes in. And when this regulation comes in, what is the challenge that you see in this regulation? Yeah, I mean, in terms of its implementation, the impact on the business, what are the kind of challenges that you have seen? I mean, you've actually surveyed the market. I was fortunate that last week we even got to meet in Mumbai and discuss this in detail. But what are the challenges that you see from what you've learned from the market?
So one is the examples which we saw. So they are a developed country. The systems are more organized in the cooling sector. A small country in terms of population or the number of appliances which are in the market. So, but contrary to that, in India we have a huge market and dispersed market, mostly informal and unorganized, so handled by a large number of enterprises. So once this policy or regulation will come, so it will be a challenge to basically involve all of them, and it will require certain level of training, certain level of competence to do it properly. And now, if in future the refrigerants are also changing, so the new refrigerants have some safety concerns also. So so basically improving competence will become more important than strengthening the capacities, not only technical but financial also, to basically upgrade these enterprises, creating this huge network of collection centers, recycling facilities, refrigerant destruction facilities, so, and then investment required for that. So these are the some of the key challenges which we have to address if we want to if we want it to be a successful program.
Awesome, Sonal. So what Mr. Sonal is trying to tell us is, if you are an existing businessman, this change is going to come, this regulation is going to come. Let's see how we can look at this as an opportunity for your business, and how do you prepare for that business by increasing our competency and also planning for it in advance, so that the regulation doesn't catch you off guard. Am I right, Sonal?
Thank you.
All right, absolutely great. Thank you so much, Sonal. Thank you for that information. And I'm sure most of our members who are in this, who are service contractors or sales and service dealers, have benefited from that information and will have a lot of takeaways from here. Thank you so much for your time, Sonal. Thank you for that information. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.